quite a number of our assignments are related to organizations. Now this video is kind of arranged in a way so that the students would be able to properly answer the questions related to organizations. Now most of the students tend to be too easy on the question on organizations, but remember, whenever there is a question on organizations which sets actually a foundation into an assignment, an in-depth presentation or a report is needed on the topic of it. Now take a look at the types of organizations. It could be not-for-profit or profit, and then of course the profit ones could be sole traders, partnerships, companies. And remember, aspect of transnational bodies, that means the companies that operate beyond the country, and of course the global entities such as multinationals. So take a look at the type of organization the question is looking at in your assignment. Focus on the not-for-profit organizations. Now you might need to touch this topic if the question is a general topic on organization. This is about organizations set up for purposes which are not for profit, like charities, NGOs, societies. Mind you, even the government institutions like let's say the police, that's a not for profit body, and they do provide various services, numerous services. Make sure that you mention some of those services. And who are the stakeholders in a not-for-profit organization? Yes, you got the donors, people who donate, beneficiaries who will get the benefit, and of course people who are working, employees and volunteers. And of course, yes, you have to enter that profit is not the motive of a not-for-profit organization. Looking at the goals and objectives of organizations of a not-for-profit body, time and again this question would be coming in a section. Many students tend to ignore this area and kind of focus on the other aspect of the question. But remember, whenever you touch the topic of not-for-profit, you need to talk about these three key areas: funds, the service, the reputation. Unlike, can't say unlike, but even more than a company that goes for profit, a not-for-profit organization depends a lot on the reputation. And yes, the service has to be something that's fine-tuned continuously so that the beneficiaries would benefit, and the beneficiaries would do the marketing for the not-for-profit. And yes, the funds, reputation and the quality of service would determine how the funds are taken. So the management of a not-for-profit organization is a huge challenge. It's not like going for advertisements and marketing and the customer is a king kind of an approach. This is a very different holistic approach. One of the toughest of challenges in managing an organization is doing it to a not-for-profit organization, because the ability to get the funds completely depends on the quality of service and how those who got the service appreciate it, and just the reputation that follows it. Not easy. Okay, let's go into the size of the organizations. Some of the organizations could be micro, it could be profit or not for profit, and some could be small and medium enterprises. Now this again is a sector that the assignments may lack in depth when the students go for it. It's easier to talk about a larger company like a public company, but remember, if the question is broad based, we may need to touch these issues. Normally a micro organization is less than 10. Yes, limited capital, scope is limited, very little geography. It's generally the startup would start as a micro when you begin. Sole traders, partnerships, even companies could be micro organizations. Grameen, the Bangladeshi example, right? It's one of those greatest of micro organization development projects, the Grameen project. Right. There are similar projects in other countries also. SMEs, these are not as large as larger entities, but anything smaller than that is okay, SME. Again, they would focus on a limited geography, like one country, maybe one region in the country. And generally they tend to be flat. They won't go for a pyramidic kind of a organizational structure. They would go flat. That means a horizontal integration of various capacities rather than developing a vertical administrative structure. They won't have separate business units, separate departments per se. They will basically, few people would get together and share the work and go for it. Normally they are privately held, but there could be public also, but generally they are private companies. and the use of technology, etc., well, very limited in a small and medium enterprise. Moving on to larger bodies. Largest may be multinationals, public limited companies, even large private companies. So not always a public limited company, but generally they are public companies. Multinational, yes, could be hierarchical. Yeah, the structure could be almost like a pyramidal structure. We call it a hierarchical structure. We'll see that later. And maybe the matrix structure is also there. Are various divisions, departments of the company, operate semi-independently to obtain benefits and services from different departments. We take a look at it, and yes, they will have multiple business units. There will be lots of support divisions, and yes, depending on technology, is huge in large organizations. Okay, looking at the organizational structure, there are multiple organizational structures, but for the sake of understanding easier, I identified 4 areas. One is a flat organization, the other one is a pyramid, we call it the hierarchical organization, next the matrix organization, and finally the network organization. Flat, normally the startups, SMEs, micro organizations go for a very easy organizational structure where a few people do all the management. It doesn't have departments, sections and divisions. Pyramidic organization, almost every government institution is a pyramidic organization. Large public companies, even multinationals, might function pyramidic sometimes, generally. Matrix, if the business is a very complex business with various business functions in various industries, in various sectors, and in different geographies, they may go for a matrix structure. And you might see a matrix structure even in a small and medium industry also, SME. So not only limited to multinational. Network structures are mostly multinationals, especially when you operate in different geographical regions and you need to obtain services from so many other outer third parties. Companies go for network structure. So MNCs, you may see pyramid, matrix or network. Small organizations would be normally flat, but somewhat larger small organization may go for a pyramidic structure. Okay, this is the flat organization. A typical, let's say, a bakery in town, a restaurant in town. They go for this kind of a flat structure. One head and a couple of others reporting to him. So they share the work. There's no particular departments they basically share up the workload. That's how the flat organization structure goes for. You will not see a multinational working in this way. Small entity, startups, micro-organizations, yes. This would be possible in a multinational sometimes, but generally in a private company. Possible in a large public company also. CEO, then the executives, then the middle management, and then the employees. A pyramidic structure. You do see this in the government structure. So a larger body could go for this pyramidic structure. We call it a hierarchical structure, right? Where the top would supervise the next and the next and the next. So you need to report upward. It's a very age-old administrative setup, like in the military. Sometimes like in the government. You do see it in the business also a lot. This, the network organization. Normally when the business operates in different geographical regions, different countries for that matter, the company cannot be operated from one end of the place, from one location. So they mean to have to interlink and interrelate, and lots of back and forth work is there. And these separate bodies may need to work with some outer parties, and they would normally function independently. We call them the cells, rather than completely depending on the center. So these are network structures, and the good thing in a network structure is it can easily grow without much of a problem. You can easily develop another network. From this network you can easily create another sub-network. So the network organization is very common in modern multinationals. This, the matrix structure, rather old way of managing a company. Here you have different projects, and then you have the different departments or divisions. So when the project A begins, let's say opening up an export operation to, let's say, another country, then various departments or divisions would work with this particular project. So project A would be setting up a team as per the management decision, and they could relate to various other divisions of the company or the departments of the company to get things going. Same goes for another project, another one. So it's easy to again develop structure. Imagine the project A, B, and C is ongoing, and the company wants to set up a new project. Yes, that's it. It's easy to run this way. So these are like strategic business units, the project A or B or C, given complete independence, or rather semi-independence, to run the project from to design to development to marketing to finance, right? All that, and backed up by various divisions. It's very common in multinationals or even large public entities. And then, yes, sir, what's its particular structure? Whenever we write an organization-based assignment, a report, a presentation, the structure is something that the presenter, the students need to focus a lot on. Take something like a company such as Unilever, a multinational. What would be the structure? Going backward, maybe it could be a matrix structure. Unilever Global may have a network kind of a structure. Pyramidic structure may not suit a larger company like Unilever, and definitely not a flat organization structure. We have to give reasons for it. Operations of such a large multinational with multitude of departments, products and services is no easy task for a single management or a single pyramidic administrative setup. So it will have a very much of an organic development, right? So whenever Unilever comes up with a new product, let's say the Dow Cosmetics, they'll have a separate network for that. Imagine Unilever is focusing on let's say the soap like the Lifebuoy or the Lux or whatever. They can easily set up a different network for that. Let's say Unilever is considering opening up an operation in Maldives. They can easily set up a mini network there. So it's easy to develop and can organically increase its size and shape as well. So the structure matters a lot. If you look at a smaller company like a micro organization or an SME, yes, I have to identify how the structure works. And yes, other companies. So normally the business related assignments have this kind of compare and contrast angle in the report. So identify the task that you have and identify the organizations you need to talk about, and we must clearly discuss the structure of the organization, the setup of the organization. And then what sort of what's the way that the business is doing work? There's a thing called the SBU, or the strategic business unit. A typical large entity, a large organization like an MNC would utilize strategic business units, we call them SBUs, in order to run operations. So I showed you this is a project A, is a strategic business unit. Imagine that let's take a company like, let's say, Unilever for that matter. They want to operate as I discussed earlier, a new operation in Maldives. So then they will set up an SBU, and that particular unit will have total access to every other departments, and they will be able to function independently to let the project run, directly supervised by the top management of the company. Here also, Johannesburg on South Africa, or London one, could be a strategic business unit set up for that particular country, that particular region, and with degree of independence to make decisions. They could outsource, they could make contracts, they could develop completely new marketing, design, development, even a product strategy differently. So SBU, or a strategic business unit, is one like that. We need to identify in our organization as to, when we discuss the structure, as to the nature of the structure that is ideal as per your understanding. So strategic business units are very common in large organizations, and something that you may need to consider when you write your report. And of course, the differences between organizations matter a lot. If you have to compare and contrast 2 or 3 organizations, think of this: size, never ignore that; objectives, always focus on it; and the market share. What sort of a market share do they have? Where do they have the market share, and what sort of segments you need to discuss this area. And of course, what about the growth aspect of the particular entity? You can easily find information about the the profitability or the sales or the revenues of the company. That should be added when you compare and contrast organizations. Always compare and contrast the performance of the company, not just the shape and the size of the company. Many students make the mistake. They are also only focusing on the size and basically focusing on the general information rather than the current operation. So for that, we need the objectives, we need the market share, we need the growth, and yes, sustainability. That's a key topic now. How environmentally conscious the company is, and how capable are they in being more responsible in their operations. That's a very important part or a section in modern day assignments, because customers are very alert to the environmental responsibility of the companies. So does the size make the company be more or less responsible? We need to find out. Stakeholders, never make this mistake of not talking about the stakeholders. A larger company like a multinational or a smaller and medium entity or a micro organization, what sort of stakeholders do they have? I have added some stakeholders. They're just put not with a particular demarcation. Banks would be there for the multinationals also. Customers are there for all the companies. Distributors will matter everywhere. And the community can be taken as a stakeholder. So identify the particular company that you have to do a research on and develop a report and take a very good in-depth study of the particular stakeholders of the company. If I get an example, like let's say Unilever Sri Lanka, again I'm going to use Unilever as an example. Okay, one key stakeholder would be households, right? And then the families, stakeholders. So whereas a micro organization may not have that kind of a thing, Unilever might have the households and the families all over Sri Lanka, not from a particular region, particular district. And yes, a large entity like Unilever might need to work with the government because of heavy taxation, corporate tax and other controls, standards. A smaller entity may not have that much of controls. So the regulators play a large role as a stakeholder in a multinational company. Multinationals may need to depend a lot on creditors. They may not be able to get all the money that they need from the shareholders or the stock exchange itself, because they need huge loads of money, and that sort of money that quick only from a creditor you can obtain. Whereas a small organization or SME may be less dependent on creditors. So study carefully, and very carefully, that is, as to the stakeholders of each organization that you have to discuss in your assignment. These are the crucial thing, and of course the functions of the business. What sort of work the company is doing? Different company. Marketing, HR, logistic, finance, audit. You may not see it in a smaller entity, but audit is a must in a multinational. Operations, research, not much in a smaller entity, but it will be there in a larger company. IT, admin, legal, there would be a department in a larger entity. So when you discuss the different organizations, always make sure to discuss the functions of each organization after careful study. So not all of it would be there in every organization. In a multinational, this and more would be there. But in a smaller company like an SME, some of it may not be there, right? So in a very small micro-organization, lot of the work would be obtained from other places, so they will not go this kind of a very deep end function. So going back in our organization assignment, whenever we go for it, never ignore the stakeholders particularly, and then the functions, always make sure of doing that. And yes, the differences between the organizations that the assignment asks us to talk about, which is a must. Difference means a current difference, a business, marketing, profitability, sustainability, meaning environmental focus. Such things should be added. And of course, identify whether there are any unique differences in organization, such as a strategic business unit. Make sure never to ignore the structure of the organization. And yes, you might need to design a structure of the organization after careful study. Is it matrix or pyramidic? We call it hierarchical, or something like network. Or in a small organization, it could be flat. And yes, the key characteristics of the company you need to mention. And never ignore your commitment to write more, add more information if you have to talk about a small and medium enterprise or a micro organization. Many students talk a lot about the large companies because it's easy to obtain information online. They're very careless on small organization. But remember, you'd be given marks on your analysis of whatever the organization that you have to go through. So, and this information may not be available online. Small organizations or micro organizations. Larger bodies, yes, they have the annual reports, this and that. So there's some research needed to talk about the SMEs, and never fail to do that. And yes, if ever you need to talk about a not-for-profit organization, make sure you understand the depth of such an organization rather than just giving a sentence or paragraph about it. Be very careful about giving an in-depth answer to an NFP. Reputation service matters far more than in another company. Funds. And yes, so types of organization, serious topics whenever you have to touch it, be it in marketing or be it in HR or be it in other subjects in our studies. So it's not a subject to go light whenever the topic is organization. Catch you in another lesson.